الذين آمنوا منكم والذين أوتوا العلم درجات والله بما تعملون خبير.
إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. أما بعد فإن خير الكلام كلام الله عز وجل وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة دلالة وكل دلالة في النار. وبعد. Welcome today, brothers and sisters, to another lesson on the 25th of Rajab in the year 1445 Al-Hijrah, corresponding to the 6th of February in the year 2024. And still continuing with our lessons about the great principles, the 6 great principles about shirk and aqidah and manhaj by Shaykh al-Islam Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhāb rahimahullah ta'ala. And the explanation is by our Shaykh Ubayd ibn Abdullah ibn Sulaiman al-Jabri rahimahullah ta'ala. تنبيه الذوي العقول السليمة إلى فوائد مستنبطة من ستة الأصول العظيمة. It's a magnificent book and a fantastic explanation, and we're looking at the explanation which has been printed by Maktab al-Furqan, because that's another edition. This is the second edition, and this one has many more details, much more benefits and details and things that the Shaykh added to this. So we're continuing with the first principle, which is the principle of ikhlās. هو إخلاص الدين لله, making the religion purely for the sake of Allah, making it sincere and pure for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now this word we mentioned a few times about this word al-ikhlās, meaning sincerity. So when we look at sincerity, we say, well, how does it connect with Tawheed? Where's the connection? In Arabic, the meaning becomes clearer. Tawheed equals al-ikhlās. And ikhlās, as we looked at before in the introduction of the Shaykh, was that it purifies something, it takes out the impurities of something. So ikhlās is takhlīs al-ibadah, yani purifying the religion, or making it pure for Allah's sake, purifying the worship. وَتَصْفِيَةٌ مِنَ الشِّرْكِ ظَاهِرٌ وَبَاطِنٌ, yani purifying that tawheed, that worship of Allah from shirk, and making it pure for Allah's sake. So this is where the connection is. Tawheed equals al-ikhlās, loosely translated as sincerity, which means negating shirk and its people, rejecting its people, negating, nullifying, keeping far away from shirk and its people. So we were looking at the evidences that the Shaykh mentioned, some evidences of the obligation of al-ikhlās and tahdhir, warning min shirk min al-Quran, and warning against shirk, associating partners with Allah. Look at the evidences from the Quran. And as we know, the evidences for ikhlās, and that being in condition, mutadhafira, yani there's so many, mutakathira, so many, they're comprehensive, and there's so many evidences. So the Shaykh began with the first evidence, and then he started speaking about, that's where we left off in the last lesson, where he's speaking about our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his situation as regards calling the people to worship Allah and keep away from the Taghut, the false deities. So the Shaykh brings an ayah in the Quran which we started last week, the last lesson, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in Surah Baqarah, يا أيها الناس اعبدوا ربكم الذي خلقكم. So, O you people, worship your Lord who created you. وَالَّذِينَ مِن قَبْلِكُمْ, and those before you, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, so that perhaps you may be pious, have taqwa. الَّذِي جَعَلَ لَكُمُ الْأَرْضَ فِرَاشًا وَالسَّمَاءَ بِنَاءً وَأَنزَلَ مِنَ السَّمَاءِ مَاءً فَأَخْرَجَ بِهِ مِنَ الثَّمَرَاتِ رِزْقًا لَكُمْ, that He is the one who created for you the earth as a surface, and the sky as and He created for you the sky as a covering over you. وَأَنزَلَ مِنَ السَّمَاءِ مَاءً, and He sent down rain for you from the heavens, from the skies, which caused the fruits to become appear, which were a provision and sustenance for you. Then Allah says, فَلَا تَجْعَلُوا لِلَّهِ أَنْدَادًا وَأَنْتُمْ تَعْلَمُونَ. So do not place partners or equals to Allah whilst you know. So the Shaykh mentions فيما بدأ الله سبحانه وتعالى هذه الآية. So with what did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala begin this ayah with? He said, the Shaykh says, بدأ بأمر الناس بإبادة الله. He began by ordering them to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the first point the Shaykh made. Then the Shaykh says, the second point is ذكر النعمة المستوجبة عبادته وحده منها ومنها. That here, the mention of here in this ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions the blessings which necessitate that we worship Allah alone. And from them are ni'mat al-khalq, the blessing that Allah created us, or He brought the creation, وهو الإيجاد من العدم, that Allah brought them into existence from nothing. They did not exist, and Allah brought them from nothing. They existed. وإنزال الماء من السماء, and descending down of rain from the skies. وإخراج الثمرات, and Allah producing vegetation and fruits. بذلك الماء, with that rain that He sent down. وجعل الأرض فراشا والسماء بناء. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made the earth as a surface, the floor, and the heavens as a covering. Then the Shaykh says, وفي آية الثانية ختام, and in this ayat that we read, there's two ayat in there. He said, the Shaykh says, and in the end of the second ayah, فلا تجعلوا لله أندادا وأنتم تعلمون. So do not make equals for Allah while you know. The Shaykh says in his explanation for this ayah, he says, Andadun jam nid. Andad, this word, is a plural of the word nid. Yeah, associates, equals, partners, and it's the plural of nid in Arabic. The Shaykh says, وَهُوَ shabih wal-mathil. And that means, this word means something that is similar to it or the like of it. فالقوم يعلمون أن هذه النعم من الله سبحانه وتعالى وحده. So the people knew that these, so that they could know that these blessings were from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. فكان لزاما, so it was necessary for them. عليهم أن يفردوه بالعبادة, that they single out Allah alone for worship. وهذا ما تعودون من Allah. This is what was expected from this is the contract that we made with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. يذكر نعمه ليكرر أنه هو المعبود وحده. And the mention of blessings is so that a person can be on certainty that he has to worship Allah alone. يذكر ربوبيته ليلزم الناس بألوهيته. Now here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, okay, if you look at the ayah, اعبدوا ربكم. Worship your Lord. Rabb. Yeah? So the Shaykh says, the mention of rububiyyah, the mention of the word Rabb, it necessitates the people to worship Allah. Okay? It necessitates us to worship Allah بِالْأُلُوهِيَّةِ بِأُلُوهِيَّتِهِ وَلِهَذَا فَمَنْ سَمِعْتُمُوهُ يُكَرِّرُ. So this is the reason that the one that you hear, who is certain بأن توحيد الربوبية هو التوحيد الذي دعت إليه رسل, that this tawheed of rububiyyah, remember before we understood and we studied, rububiyyah is the lordship of Allah. Yani He's the king, the possessor of the day of judgment, He's the creator, He's the disposer of all the matters and other matters and other attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which are specific for Him. So that is a rububiyyah, okay? And so when you hear about the person who says with surety, with certainty, that this is the tawheed which the messengers came with, Shaykh says, فَهَذَا إِمَّا جَاهِلٌ وَإِمَّا ضَالٌ. So this person who claims this, he's either ignorant or he's misguided. The Shaykh says, مَا دَعَتَ الرُّسُلُ قَوْمَهَا إِلَى تَوْحِيدِ الرُّبُوبِيَّةِ. The messengers didn't come to their people to call them to Tawheed al-Rububiyyah. فِيمَا نَعْلَمْ بَلْ دَعُوا إِلَى تَوْحِيدِ الْأُلُوهِيَّةِ. And really, in fact, they came to call their people to Tawheed al-Uluhiyyah, yani worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone without any partners. That was their da'wah, that was their call. The Shaykh says, وَلَا نَأْخُذْ مَثَلًا آخَر. The Shaykh says, we will take another example. يقول Allah Azza wa Jal, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَقَاتِلُوهُمْ, and fight against them, حَتَّى لَا تَكُونُ فِتْنَةً, so that there is no fitna, وَيَكُونُ الدِّينُ لِلَّهِ, and that the religion is only for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Surah Baqarah, ayah 193. And the Shaykh says in another similar ayah, كُلُّهُ لِلَّهِ, yani the deen is all for Allah's sake. So this ayah is very important, but it also needs to be understood in its right context. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions ayat, and the Prophet also mentions hadith, they are to be understood in their correct circumstances, in their correct situation. So we look at the tafsir of these ayat, we look at the tafsir of explanations of the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, so we put them into the right context and we don't become misguided. So this ayah says, fight them until there is no fitna. It doesn't mean that you go out and start fighting the kuffar, the non-Muslims. La. You strive to call them to Islam. Call them to Islam. And that when there is, the Muslims are in power and they have the authority, then they go out to stop this fitna. As Ibn Kathir rahimahullah mentions, and Ibn Kathir rahimahullah is one of the great mufassirin, the explainers of the Quran. And he died in the year 774 al-Hijrah. 774 al-Hijrah, and he was the great mufassir, an explainer of the Quran, and he was a great student of Ibn Taymiyyah. He was a student of Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah ta'ala. And he said, this statement of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, حَتَّى لَا تُكُونَ فِتْنَةً, he mentions, means shirk. So حَتَّى لَا تُكُونَ, so there does not remain shirk. And this is the point here being that this is something which is evil. This is something which is evil. Shirk is something which is evil. Yeah, and in Islam, and in this worldly life, our battle is against evil. Our battle is against evil, because shirk is the worst crime that a person can commit. the worst sin a person can commit is associating partners with Allah. And this statement, is shirk, was said by Ibn Abbas, the great companion of the Prophet ﷺ. The Shaykh says, Ibn Kathir says, and it was said by Abu al-Aliyah, who died in the year 93 al-Hijrah, and he was a tabi'i, he was a successor, those who met and were Muslims, and they met the companions of the Prophet ﷺ. That means he's a tabi'i. Mujahid, who died in 103 al-Hijrah, and Hasan al-Basri, who was also a tabi'i, who died in the year 110 al-Hijrah. And this same statement was said by all of these. Yani Ibn Abbas said it, Abu Ali said it, Mujahid, Hasan al-Basri, wa Qatada, who died in the year 117. And he also narrated, Qatada also narrated from Anas ibn Malik, wa Rabi', who also died in a similar time, wa Maqatil ibn Hayyan, who died in 150 al-Hijrah, wa Suddi, who died 127 al-Hijrah, was Zayd ibn Aslam, who died in 136. Now, if you look at this, it seems like it's just a bunch of names, and we're mentioning the when they passed away and everything. But there's a science behind when the scholars quote an athar, and a statement of a companion, or a statement of statements of the tabi'een, successors. But notice how the time line, or the time scale, it's that they're all tabi'een, that they were the ones that learned from the companions, and they all said the same statement. So that's what they learned from the companions of the meaning of this ayah. And this is very important, meaning that this is what the companions understood, and they conveyed it to the tabi'een. And that's how we take the understanding of the religion. We take that understanding of the religion. And that's why these names are very important, to know who our Salaf were, to know who the pious predecessors were. Very important to learn these names and understand who they were, because they're the ones that conveyed the Quran, just like they conveyed the Sunnah and the correct understanding. That's why we go back to the way of the Salaf. When people come along and to say, oh, just read Quran, or just stick to Quran, and then they themselves quote fabricated hadith, fabricated lies against the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they're talking about, oh, just read Quran, just read Quran. Ya akhi, it's not like that. The Quran has to be understood correctly. Otherwise, you can't just say, I'll read the Quran and that's it, and implement. You can't. You have to go back to the understanding of the Salaf and the Mufassirin. Then Ibn Kathir rahimahullah mentions, and says Shaykh Ubayd quoting this, he says, وَيَكُونُ دِينُ لِلَّهِ, the statement of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Shaykh Ibn Kathir says, أي يكون دين لله وهو الظاهر العالي على سائر الأديان, and that the religion of Allah is apparent and it is uppermost above all the other religions, above all the other religions, because Islam is the religion of justice. It's a religion of justice. The rules and regulations that we're supposed to follow are just for us. They're good for us. They're good for our well-being in the dunya and in the hereafter. So that's why Islam has to be the uppermost. And the Sheikhs, and then Ibn Kathir rahimahullah said, كما ثبت في الصحيحين, as is established in the Bukhari and Muslim, from Abi Musa al-Ash'ari, who said, سئل النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم عن الرجل يقاتل شجاعة, that the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم was asked about a man who fights with bravery, ويقاتل حمية, and he fights to protect and defend, and also he fights out of حمية, يعني passionate, he's passionate about his fighting. وَيُقَاتِلْ رِيَاء, and he fights, and another person fights showing off. He fights to be famous, he fights to become well known. Like some of these people, they say, oh, if we go out for jihad and we get killed, we'll be famous, people will know us. A'udhu billah min dhalik. We seek refuge in Allah from that. We do all our actions purely for Allah's sake without letting the people know. That's when you will know it's truly for Allah's sake. Some of the Salaf, they used to do such good actions for such a long time, and their wives and children wouldn't even know. Wives and children wouldn't even know. In their own houses, they wouldn't know that these were the good deeds that they were doing. So we protect our good deeds by hiding. So then it was asked, Ayyu dhalika fi sabilillah? Which of these is in the path of Allah? Which of this is the correct path? Which is the one is correct? The Prophet ﷺ said, Man qatala litakuna kalimatullahi al-ulya fahuwa fi sabilillah. Whoever fights that the statement of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is uppermost, then he is the one in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And obviously this is with its conditions and its rulings and its prerequisites and all its the regulations and everything. It's not chaotic or anything like that. So no one should understand that means just go out and then start fighting or anything like that, because we have to make the religion uppermost. La. There is a methodology, there is a path, there is a way of doing that. And it's not through demonstrations, and it's not through protests, and it's not through political activism. La. This is by learning the religion ourselves, giving da'wah, and when Allah decrees for that type of situation to occur. And Ibn Kathir mentions, وَفِي سَهِيهَيْن, and also in Bukhari and Muslim is the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, أُمِرْتُ أَنْ أُقَاتِلَ النَّاسِ, I've been commanded to fight the people, حَتَّى يَقُولُوا لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ, and so much so that they say that there is none worthy of worship except Allah. And the Prophet ﷺ was ordered to fight the people to the extent that they should say La ilaha illallah. فَإِذَا قَالُوهَا, so if they say it, أَسَمُوا مِنِّي دِمَاءَهُمْ, then they are their blood is under my protection, وَأَمْوَالُهُمْ, and their wealth, إِلَّا بِحَقِّهَا وَحِسَابُهُمْ عَلَى اللَّهِ, except for which is rightly to you, and their account is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is taken from Tafsir Ibn Kathir. With that, we've come to the end of today's lesson. Jazakum Allahu khairan for listening. Subhanak Allahumma wa bihamdika. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Anta astaghfiruka wa atubu alayk. Wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad.